We'll have Davenport in there instead of Stevie Steele. Was there something else we need to do?
Let's see.
We've got 2 resolutions we need to have.
Yeah, the resolution of support of the SRO program.
Right.
Yeah.
And let's see here, 2028 is the, I guess that's CARES carryover from 20?
Correct.
Okay. What was this other one here? Deed of vacation, do we need to add it, or is it already on here?
That's going to be an item that needs to be approved once you move to vacate all of the boundary lines at the sports complex. That's
Oh,
already
okay.
on your agenda. That's just an extra item.
Oh, okay. Okay, I also move that we amend the agenda with those items.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you. Citizens' comments. Was there anyone that came to speak tonight as citizens? Correction and approval of minutes. We had a called meeting on July the 7th, a second called meeting on July the 7th. One was 5:30, one was 6:30. We had a work session on July the 7th. Then we had a regular meeting on July the 14th and another called meeting on July the 21st.
I'll make a motion, we approve all 5.
Second.
All in favor? Brings us to a public hearing regarding the proposed issuance of bonds in the maximum amount of $3 million. This is for the part of the project that's going on Carpenter Drive. It'll include Mallow Road and Edgemont Drive. I want to go ahead and open the public hearing. Does anyone want to speak on any of this? I'll close the public hearing. The next item we have is an appointment to consider an appointment to the Redevelopment and Housing Authority. I think that's
Mr. Carson.
Mr. Carson's seat, and he's willing to serve.
I'll make a motion, we reappoint Lance Carson.
I'll second.
All in favor? Brings us to presentations. Steve Steele was supposed to be here tonight with CHA regarding landfill operations. He's not able to attend. He's had some little health issue come up, and he's at the hospital now. They're checking him out. Sounds like he's okay. Just need to go down there and get checked out. So he's not going to be here. David.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, David Rose from Davenport, and we have the good fortune of serving as your financial advisor for the proposed funding that you have just mentioned and had a public hearing on. Pleased to report that we received 3 bona fide bids from 3 banks, 2 of which are active, all 3 actually are active here in the community. The top 2 banks, BB&T, which is now called Truist, and Highlands Community. And we are recommending, because those bids are so strong, that we ask for best and final. And we do that and give those folks, if they wish to provide that, several days, perhaps until Monday. At such time, we will take what we get and report back through the city manager. The city attorney, Mr. Popovich, and I have spoken. He can address how exactly the mechanics of this will work. But this is something that you're allowed to do under Virginia procurement, and that is to get in proposals from banking institutions. You're not required to pick the lowest interest rate. You're allowed to take into consideration terms and conditions, as well as, for example, how active or how much a banking institution may mean to the community. So you can add those intangibles in, if you will. And so it's different than, for example, a formal construction bid that, let's say, is due in at 11 o'clock, and even if it's 1 penny more or less, you're required to go to something like that. if they meet all the various criteria. So this is different, and that as a result, we're going to recommend that you do a best and final, and that I will, with your blessing, notify the top two banks. The third bank that was behind both of them was Premier Bank, which of course has a branch right across the street, but they were third, and so we'd like to recommend the top two be put in competition. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if the city manager or maybe Mr. Popovich may want to add to that.
Yeah, the only thing that really I would like to point out is there is a resolution in front of you. There is an actual blank in that resolution at the moment, so it does not designate which lender you chosen specifically at this point. But what I would certainly recommend, if it's your wish to move forward and adopt the resolution, is to adopt it under the contingency that it be a bank that is providing such funds at a rate of no more than 1.6%. There, that gives you the option to pick whomever you want, gives the additional time, and then it will allow the city manager, the final and best bids come in, to just fill in the blank, and you're well on your way. You don't have to hold an additional meeting.
So may I want to understand as well, Mr. Popovich, that you're going to then, the way the resolution would set up, would give the city manager the ability to select either one of them, assuming that they both provide a best and final, so that we still have two bona fide offers.
Correct. It would simply, so effectively, it would be, you would be had a motion to adopt the resolution as presented, with the caveat that the lender be chosen by the city manager Monday of next week at an interest rate of less than 1.6%.
And that would be a fixed rate for the entire year, and the ability to prepay that is potentially there. We will confirm that. We'll ask them again about that. But the focus here is that because of this emergency that's come about, that you need these funds, the goal would be to close on that financing basically by the end of this month of August. And so then you have funds available, and again, you could draw it down in $1 million chunks, or you draw it all at once, depending upon, again, we will ask the banks to give us some clarification on how they want to do this. So that'll be part of the evaluation. So,
Bruce, Libby, do you want to add anything?
No, sir. I do believe at this point we have it narrowed to two banks, one which a bank franchise that we've done work with in the past, and one that is locally. So as Mr. Rose has stated, we will try to do a, because the offers are very competitive, a best and final offer approach, and see what we get back. And from that point, proceed and have an interest rate that does not exceed 1.6% on that line of credit.
and just one more thing, if I could just add a little bit for context for everybody that's here. The way it's set up is purposely as an interim financing because, number one, if ultimately the costs of the project are less than $3 million, then certainly those monies will be retired. And then ultimately, depending upon what, if any, dollars you get from, let's say, some outside sources, meaning some sort of grant monies or some sort of insurance type monies, whatever you don't get, let's say, just go with me for a minute, for instance, let's say that is $2 million or whatever it is, then you can decide, working with staff, how you want to permanently pay for and reimburse, pay for those monies. That's basically what you have. So you're not locking yourself into that you'll permanently owe $3 million. That remains to be seen. It depends on how much the project is, depends on what other monies come in to offset that. And then second, you'll have a flexibility to whatever monies you don't have and that you are responsible for, there'll be a series of, I'm sure, strategies that we will work with your staff to recommend to council down the road as to how to ultimately pay for what is the permanent portion of this $3 million. And it could be all $3 million, it could be less than that. That remains to be seen. Nobody knows that right now.
Council, you have any questions? Thank you.
So I guess you have to take action on this resolution, is that it?
We'll get to the resolution here in a little bit.
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that you all are fully okay with this approach. That there's, just a consensus amongst you all. Okay.
And then I think the only thing is just make sure it's a voice vote in terms of, meaning a
Roll call.
roll call vote.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Rudd.
City manager report.
At the risk of the audio, I will go upstairs.
Well, speak up so we can hear you over here.
Oh, you know what? I might not be able to get back, so I'll just. I'll speak up. So, just was thinking it would be difficult with the mask, which is not. So, there are several key items that I want to provide an update to you all on. Item number 1 is a economic development update. And Vice Mayor Crozier, feel free to chime in on any of these items as you see fit, as you are also on the Economic Development Corporation as well. However, as chair, I do want to report out to you on some of the high-level activities. I think that's pertinent, that since we are 50-50 partners in this with Allegheny County now. The EDC continues its focus on site development and marketing, primarily trying to transition to marketing a site as we work to develop the site. We are working to explore consultative services to further this. As you all know, we have a vacancy with the executive director position, as there was a recent resignation of Ms. Akridge. So there is efforts to look at a consultative engagement to work on those 2 goals of site development and marketing of site development, as well as marketing of the EDC. We're actively working to identify a path forward to achieve these goals, which includes reaching out to developers, investors, as well as the foundation. With that being said, are there any questions on that? We have narrowed it down to a site, and we are trying to move forward with plans as far as a path forward with financing and how do we get that site ready to go.
Are you working on getting a new director for the EDC?
At this point in time, we're looking at a consultative service, someone that has a different approach potentially to what we've done in the last 13 years. There's been discussions at the staff level between Mr. Lanford, Ms. McClung, myself, as well as with the voting members of the EDC on maybe trying a new approach with folks that are based in, other areas where there's a little bit more heavy developer and investor presence in some of the more metropolitan areas of the state where there's a different level of ability to finance and do more of their own work with regards to redevelopment or some of the things that we're trying to achieve here. And how we do our marketing approaches to getting businesses here and how we do that outreach. Does that make sense? And I believe the individual that we've discussed doing that with, you've met. When we talked about marketing.
Oh, okay.
That is, yes.
Branding guy.
We're looking at potentially having a further discussion with that individual with the EDC board. They have expressed an interest.
Thank you.
With regards to anything else? Anything to add, Mr. Crozier? Okay. CARES funding efforts to expend, we're working feverishly to expend those dollars to comply with the Department of Labor requirements, which have been very intensive. Mr. Popovich and his firm were very gracious in providing us a very nice succinct memo on some of the new requirements that all employers are required to comply with or face fines and penalties at this point, and that is coming from Department of Labor and Industry as well as Bosch. So it's becoming quite a ever-evolving effort. We're working to identify the necessary steps and acting on those for the second round of the CARES allocation, which was announced recently last week, which we will be receiving a second disbursement of the same dollar value that we received in early June. So we'll be getting an additional 438 some odd thousand, Mr. Bryan? $483,000. I will tell you, with even including lots of big scale projects, we are feverishly trying to figure out how we can spend it all. It's an opportunity to make us better in a lot of areas and invest in things that we need for a building, but also actually invest in a lot of contactless solutions. To date, we've identified, Mr. Bryant has taken a great lead on that with safety and risk management, opportunities for some automatic doors in areas, motionless switchers, automatic equipment in the bathrooms relating to toilets, sinks, hand dryers, motion sensor switches. We've looked at antimicrobial break room tables. We've also looked at the partition aspects that are required, as well as carpet removal of fabric chairs so that they can effectively be wiped down or sprayed down. And you know, even in the absence of that, not hold germs as long. We're working to send out a memo to all joint and shared services, Mr. Bryan and myself, to let them know that we will be willing to review and potentially approve funding requests, for instance, as it may relate to improvements that are needed at the courthouse for contactless security screens. You know, right now, if you go in, you go through the pocketbook, which has a potential COVID risk exposure. So, you know, there's efforts to look at getting a scanner and x-ray machine to, you know, put your stuff through, those sorts of efforts. And, you know, the library submitted a request as well, which we've received and we do plan to act on. The Chamber of Commerce has put in a request for some of those things that I've mentioned, you know, automatic doors, a contactless toilet and sink, those kinds of things that, you know, we're working to receive those from jointly funded agencies that we and the city, the county, as well as the towns contribute to. So we'll keep you posted on that. The budget survey that we actually completed on the CARES funding, we will have some additional dollars available, we believe, to also do some improvements at Edgemont for contactless facility efforts, as well as potentially some ventilation improvements for the folks there, as well as there may be dollars available, as I know council had previously expressed some interest in having some dollars to additionally assist businesses impacted by COVID. So I think that there, as we work to further project out costs and get then the requests from joint and shared services to then allow you all some good projections on what may be left, because as we figured it, it might be upwards of maybe 150 to 180,000 left to then, and that's if we're able to spend everything. Have a discussion as to how you all would wish to administer that, whether it's through the chambers that are dealing with the DHCD emergency funding, or something that would want to go to our Main Street organization to assist businesses, or you know, the EDC or something of that nature, to have those discussions. So wanted to put that bug in you all's ear as something to start to mull over and think of, you know, because we're definitely looking at there being something left over and then having the ability to program that back to something in the community. Next thing I want to give you all an update on active grants. So we have the Historic Main Street Revitalization Planning Grant, which has had really good participation so far from the community as well as staff and the management team. 7 proposals were received for our Main Street grant. It was only advertised for 14 days. So that is very good. We have a good list of very reputable studios, as well as some that are new to submitting proposals for the city, so this is exciting. The review panel's been composed. For that, it will actually be myself, Mr. Bryant. We picked a joint entity with us on that grant, which is Ms. Hammond from the Chamber. Well, also, because we have about 12 folks on the planning management team, so we picked a smaller group to review all 7. Ms. Hammond, and then Mr. Ray Lipes from Lumos, from the business community, and we would narrow it down to the top 3, and then the full group would then review the final top 3 to make a selection, for interview purposes. The Joint Opportunity Zone grant between the city and county is progressing very nicely. The shared goal and initiative there is we're working to highlight spaces viable for mixed-use commercial purposes. One thing we've tried to focus on, I at least have for the city, we have some great perspective capacity with the Boardman's building, or which was Peebles, as well as the former Kroger building, to either have it as a single commercial entity or multi-unit commercial entity for retail space of that nature or other stuff. So focusing on viable commercial opportunities, as well as looking at diversified housing by focusing on our surplus schools in the region, of really giving us the option of having that mixed-use market where there is rental apartments. Not one size fits all for folks. There's been a lot of success in recent years in localities out here in Southwest Virginia. Vinton is a great example when they did with their surplus schools with 1 to 2, I believe it's just 1 and 2 bedroom lofts. But we have that opportunity here, so that's what we're pushing with that grant. It's commercial space and then diversified housing. So there's 3 schools in that. So there's former Clifton High School, is it Boiling Springs? Falling Springs, and then the former Rivermont School, which is in the city. The Jackson Street grant, we've requested an extension on the planning grant, and that was really done to finalize the formal report for DHCD and get all conceptual drawings and design done by September 30th. The next step in advancing that would be a construction improvement grant application, which we will be working with CHA on that. The ARC grant for the drone zone, we are continuing to work with DHCD and stakeholders on updates to resubmit. That has been an ongoing effort. And I just want to give you guys a brief update on our current active projects. Maple Avenue, the phase 2 began last week. Final completion date, weather dependent, is February 14th per contract. It definitely could be sooner. They are making some great progress out there. South Allegheny Avenue, the paving will officially start. We got a date, September 14th, and that will last 5 days. So we will make sure that we get ample notice out to the businesses in that corridor, which are a heavy industry, as well as the folks that live in that area, that there will be potential traffic impacts. But it's September 14th, and it will last 5 days. Ashland Avenue in South Carpenter, it's progressing nicely, and it is in line with the project's schedule at this time. It's slated to be completed in early November. It's 11% complete overall with the efforts underway right now with Ashland and Carpenter. As you all may recall, I shared with you all, we lost some time due to utility conflicts. Namely, there were some overhead conflicts, but it was the gas lines and there were some complications there. We have at this point in time started to realize some cost savings, which is good news. They've been able to shorten the length of their nails by 10 feet. There's savings per nail that they're able to do that. There's also been some less extensive excavation that is having to occur. So we are starting to realize potentially we could save upwards of $90,000 to $100,000 with the project approach. As I said, it's one of those things you don't know till you're in there, and they really start working. But they are working to, 1, make sure it's secure and sound, but 2, that we're getting value for our dollar. With that being said, are there any questions on any of those areas that I've provided updates? I realize it's a lot of information.
Council, any questions? Thank you, Chris.
Actually, Mr. Nidus, paving project on Allegheny. Is that going to be an around-the-clock effort, or is that going to be a mostly at night to reduce impact with businesses, or is that going to be during the day? Do we have an idea of how that's going to be done?
I did not receive an update on the timing of the work. Traditionally, this is not a traditional area because that sees traffic 24/7 because of its location
Right.
to major industry in Jevity and West Rock. Normally, work is done between 9 and 4, so you miss morning rush hour, but this is not a normal corridor on 220. So that will be something that we will follow up with and ask. The contractor on that job is going to be Allegheny Asphalt, so I don't think it's an issue for them to provide us a time they're great to work with. So we'll follow up and just see what they plan. for
I
the
would
schedule.
think it'd be daytime
I would
paving.
think so,
The rest of
yeah.
those projects too, they've been daytime.
Okay.
I don't know why they would change, but they might be a good option for them. Cut down on, of course, I wouldn't want to, somebody laying asphalt in front of my house 3 o'clock in the morning.
It does create a bit of a noise factor.
I was just wondering out of curiosity.
I think they'll do one lane at a time.
Particularly-
so that
I would be
they'll
the first one to raise the cane about it.
Yeah, you would.
I would be the first one to raise the cane
Would that
about it.
upset you, Raymond?
Yes, sir. Like no-
Let's just stick with
like
daytime paving.
Yeah, and traditionally with high traffic areas like that, they'll do one lane at a time on
Right.
each side, so
If they do.
5 days is not overly extensive, so it should have minimal impact.
Anything else? Let's move on. Under ordinances and resolutions, we have a second reading of ordinance 20-02, an omnibus ordinance amending and reenacting certain sections of Chapter 6 Animals of the Code of the City of Covington. We had the first reading last week.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any comments or questions?
Did we catch the typos?
Did you find the typos?
I found some, yes, sir.
Oh, no.
So, Ms. Wood, could we have a roll call on this one, please?
Mr. Ensminger?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
Four.
Mr. Tucker?
4.
Vice Mayor Crozier?
4.
Mayor Sabo?
4. Now, that's all we need to do.
Yes, sir.
Under resolutions, we have a resolution 20-24 regarding BB&T Bank franchise tax refund in the amount of $37,731.
Painfully move for approval.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Just for clarification, this was a mistake that was made at the state level? that
Correct.
We got more money than we were supposed to.
That is correct.
Now we're giving it back
That's correct.
without interest.
Correct.
That's
Right.
yes. Ms. Wood, could we do a roll call on this one?
Mr. Ensminger?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
Four.
Mr. Tucker?
4.
Vice Mayor Crozier?
4.
Mayor Sabo?
4. Next item is Resolution 20-25 in support of VDOT Smart Scale application for East Madison Avenue and pedestrian bridge at Jackson River Sports Complex.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any questions or discussions? I think both these projects hit real low on their list last time.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, so we were encouraged to make some additional improvements, namely to safety aspects of them and to resubmit.
Any other questions or concerns, council? Ms. Wood, let's do a roll call on that.
Mr. Ensminger?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
Four.
Mr. Tucker?
4.
Vice Mayor Crozier?
4.
Mayor Sabo?
4. Next, we have appropriation resolution 20-26 regarding EMS medical equipment grant in the amount of $70,562. These are carryover funds.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Ms. Wood, could we have a roll call on that one, please?
Mr. Ensminger,
4.
Mr. Hunter,
Four.
Mr. Tucker,
4.
Vice Mayor Crozier,
4.
Mayor Sabal.
4. So we have 2 resolutions that we added. The first one is 20-27. This is in support of the SRO School Resource Officers Program. When the General Assembly goes back into session the 18th of August, one of the issues that may come up is doing away with resource officers. We will, if we pass this resolution, we will be expressing our concern about losing resource officers and our appreciation of what they do and have done and can do in the future. So, did we have a,
I move for approval.
I'll second.
do we have any questions or concerns? All right, let's do a roll call, Ms. Wood.
Mr. Ensminger,
4.
Mr. Hunter,
Four.
Mr. Tucker,
4.
Vice Mayor Crozier,
4.
Mayor Sabal.
4. Sometimes I like to do those roll calls just so we get to sign our names on the bottom.
And I will say both of the SRO positions are fully funded in the FY21 budget that you all approved for them to be in schools. And we've been working to ensure that we try to keep them in schools 5 days a week. As much, and that was a change that we started actually last year of bumping that up
Good.
with support and encouragement from council and the community.
Well, I've seen resource officers in the schools for several years, and I've seen some of the work they do, and they're very important to what happens in the Covington City Schools.
I agree. I was in school when they started that program with the current sheriff being the resource officer when I was there. And it is a great program. I think it's something that we need to continue to push to keep active in this area, no matter what the state decides to do with it.
All right. Ms. Wood, I have in my little stack of stuff here, I've got resolution 20-29. I do not have a 28. I want you 27.
That would be
28 is
the
CARES money.
the CARES money. Yes, sir.
That was not in my stack.
Should be there.
All right.
Probably is.
Resolution 2028. This is some carryover CARES money, is that the way to say that? And approval of new CARES money. Is that all at the
No,
same
just-
time? Just carryover?
Just carryover.
Good. Yeah.
All right.
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
Do y'all have any questions or concerns? I'm good once I found it.
That's right. We'll get you there.
All right, Ms. Wood, could we have a roll call now, please?
Mr. Ensminger,
4.
Mr. Hunter,
Four.
Mr. Tucker,
4.
Vice Mayor Crozier,
4.
Mayor Sabal.
4. Next one is Resolution 2029. It's authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds, amount not to exceed $3 million of the city of, not to exceed $3 million, the city of Covington, and a note in anticipation of the bonds and providing in the form, details, and payments of the note. And that's what David talked to us about tonight.
Yes, sir.
Now, in the motion, do we need to add in there not to exceed the 1.6% interest rate?
Correct. The motion would be to approve Resolution 20-29 with the stipulation that the lender shall be chosen by the city manager at an interest rate not to exceed 1.6%.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or
Good job,
discussion?
Mark.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you.
Ms. Wood, David asked that we do a roll call on this one.
Mr. Ensminger,
4.
Mr. Hunter,
Four.
Mr. Tucker,
4.
Vice Mayor Crozier,
4.
Mayor Sabal.
4. Under new business, we need to consider a motion to vacate certain paper streets and alleys in the Edgemont subdivision owned by the city of Covington and operated as the Jackson River Sports Complex.
So move.
Second.
Any questions or discussion? Ms. Wood, can we have a roll call on that?
Mr. Enspinger?
Four.
Mr. Hunter?
Four.
Mr. Tucker?
Four.
Vice Mayor Crozier?
4.
Mayor Sabo?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
in relation to that motion that you just adopted, there is also, the entire subdivision was platted back in the day, and now you own all those little individual parcels that make up the sports complex. In order for you to get certain monies from the state that are owed to you, I believe it's like $15,000, is that correct? We're trying to clear this up so that they have one deed to look at rather than, I don't know how many hundreds. So at your places, I provided a deed of vacation that will vacate the interior boundary lines of the lots within the sports complex. And then that can be used and submitted to the state so that you may recover those funds. So what I would be asking for is simply a motion to authorize the mayor to execute that deed of vacation on your behalf.
And the funds will be coming from the Department of Conservation and Recreation as part of the reimbursement effort for the most recent trail upgrades that were done and the boat ramp, the ADA access, fishing pier deck.
Okay.
Did we add this to the agenda? Or was this okay because it was associated with?
It's an associated item to the entire project. You've essentially done away with the streets, and now you got to just do away with the lot line.
Got you covered. Move for approval.
Second.
Questions, concerns? Ms. Wood, we roll call everything else.
Mr. Enspinger?
Four.
Mr. Hunter?
Four.
Mr. Tucker?
Four.
Vice Mayor Crozier?
4.
Mayor Sabo?
4. Want me to just sign one of that in hand?
That'd be fine, but it has to be notarized because it's got to get recorded. So unless, if there is,
David?
says, what are you, David? Well, no
I
problem.
sure am.
Then there-
Cost the city $12. Times is tough.
Ms. Apples doesn't charge.
Well, I'll wait and sign it in her presence. All right, council, do you have any other new business?
Oh, you answered my
I believe we've said all we can. Move for adjournment.
second.
All in favor?
Oh, did you have something? I'm
No,
sorry.
no, I'm good.
Okay.
We're adjourned.
Well, I'll just say one quick thing, I guess. We'll move the intended presentation from CHA, if it's okay with council, to potentially have that done in September.
As long as he's upright by then. Hope he's all right.
I do too.
He's talking on the phone.
Yeah, he was a little nervous, but he's all right.